Welcome to Part of the Arts with me, Rebecca Godden. On today's episode, we have Stephen Love. Stephen is an actor, puppeteer and creature performer with credits including Warhorse, Doctor Who and Behind Her Eyes, and has worked for companies such as Netflix, Disney, BBC and Amazon Prime. He's also an entrepreneur, as he's created a puppetry workshop company that introduces young people to the art of puppetry. I'm so excited to delve into this art form that has always been such an interest to me. So here we have it, Part of the Arts with Stephen Love. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Becca.
Welcome to Parts of the Arts. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Now, I asked you to think about something before we start the podcast today. A little icebreaker. What have you said recently, or it doesn't have to be recently, if you can't think of something recently, that should have stayed in your head? So something you said out loud that you probably shouldn't have.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and I'm not going to repeat what I said, obviously because it should have already stayed in my head in the first time. But recently I had someone ask me what I thought of a certain person in the industry and their company, and I'm a very honest person, so I give a very honest answer.
I can see where this is going.
Without realising that the person who'd asked me that question had a direct link to that person. And
everyone knows everyone in the industry.
Yeah, and it was immediately obvious when I was replying that that was not the answer they were looking for, and it involved some very diplomatic reasoning after that initial statement. So yeah, that probably should have stayed in my head on that one.
So diplomatic reasoning, as in digging yourself out of a hole.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I stand by what I said, but probably was to the wrong person.
Okay, you can tell me after. You can tell me afterwards. I love that. I was trying to think of something I've done recently, and I think, do you know what? I think I'm growing. I think I've done really well. I actually couldn't think of anything that I've done since I last recorded one of these. So otherwise I'd repeat myself. That I've said out loud that I shouldn't, or maybe I'm just getting a little bit more like, I don't care.
Probably that one as well. I mean, usually I'm pretty good at it. You know, I've become very accustomed to having to be very good at not doing that. But I think this is just one moment where they caught me off guard, and there was like a knee-jerk response, and then immediately regretted what was said. So,
well, I feel like as performers, we've already always got like a bit of an internal monologue going on, and sometimes that just comes out, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Just comes out, but save it for drinks afterwards. Yeah. So yeah, I can't think of one. That's really boring, but maybe I'm just growing or not caring as a person. Either way. Now this one's a lovely one. What's the last thing that you saw that left you with a spark? So it could be theatre, film, it could be a podcast, any art form.
Yeah, so I actually saw a reel on Instagram from a puppet maker that I know. But this was one of their kind of historic reels. They'd reshared it from, I think it was about 10 years ago. So I'd not seen this reel before, even though I've known their more recent work. Their kind of initial work I wasn't really familiar with. So when they reshared this post and I was watching this reel, it was an amazing puppet, which was not held together. So it was controlled by 6 people, and each person had a different limb or component of this puppet, but these components weren't connected in any way. So it was purely the puppeteers moving in the same space with the same rhythm, keeping the distance equal the entire time. And it was a really fantastic clip. And watching it made me think about something that I maybe want to further develop next year. And about how a puppet doesn't necessarily have to be attached the whole time, but it can still be a one entity. So that was really cool.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And like puppetry is obviously your passion. You're an actor, puppeteer, so that is the world that you're in. I saw that you were at like a 3-day workshop creating puppets rather than just manipulating them.
Yeah, so that's something I've been quite interested in exploring, is the idea of not only being a puppeteer as in performing with the puppets and bringing the puppets to life, but also potentially start to create my own puppets, whether that's for other people or for my own work, whichever one. So it was a 3-day workshop with a person called Nick Barnes and Nick's team. Nick is one of the foremost puppet makers in the country. most people will have seen his work because one of his most famous puppets is the Life of Pi
Oh my
puppets,
gosh,
which is obviously fantastic. His studio ran a 3-day introduction to puppet making course down in Brighton. So I went along to that, and it was absolutely fantastic. And everyone should just look at Nick and Caroline and the rest of their team's work, because incredible stuff.
Well, I love puppetry. You know what I do. Like, we went to uni together here at the University of Winchester, and there was, we did a little bit of introduction into puppetry, didn't we? And I remember that module was just like, I love this. And I love that you're now looking in the direction of creating them as well as manipulating them, because you've obviously done some big stuff, some large scale work. One of the kind of probably most impressive credits for me from you is Warhorse.
Yeah,
Tell us about Warhorse.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing, gorgeous, beautiful show, and it is now back out touring again, which is fantastic. So go see it. If anyone who hasn't gone to see it, absolutely go and see it, because there is nothing else like it in theatre. And I think Life of Pi is obviously spectacular as well. So either one of those two shows.
I've not seen Life of Pi yet. I need to go.
But there is something about Warhorse which is just so unique, and it is obviously we've just had Remembrance Day. And the message is obviously very poignant at the moment because of that. But the show is absolutely sensational. If you think it was kind of the first show to use those large life-size puppets, really brought it to kind of the forefront of commercial theatre. Yeah. And it is just exceptional. And I was very fortunate to be on a 2-year tour. So we toured the UK from 2017 to 2019. We did I think 18 cities in 19 months.
Wow. Okay, so I've got to ask you, obviously every act has a different experience with touring, but that's quite a long stint. That's
it was
a
expensive.
Busy stint as well. Like, you're moving around. How did you find touring? What was like digs like, or did you stay in hotels? Like, how did you navigate that? What did you do?
So that was actually a really lovely tour. I mean, it was a big tour, as you said. It was very long, but because of the length of the tour and because of the scale of the show, it wasn't like a regional theatre tour where you can maybe be doing like 1 or 2 nights somewhere, then you're going somewhere new a couple of days later, and your digs kind of vary. With Warhorse, we were in the cities for at least 3 weeks, usually a month. You're looking at Airbnbs. The digs are really nice.
You can settle a little bit more.
You can, because the show is very demanding, brilliant but demanding. Particularly if you're a puppeteer. So it's important to have that great setup for you to be able to rest and relax when you're not on show. It was really great, and actually being able to see so many cities.
I was going to say, did you actually feel like you had like new homes for a month? Yeah,
exactly. You really got to learn learn a city and embed yourself and discover different places. And there were several places on the tour which I've been really keen to visit anyway, and now have to visit them. Yeah, and really looking forward to potentially going back there in my own capacity as just a visitor, really. But there was a lot of time to be able to get to know the local community, find your favourite coffee shop, find your favourite restaurant. Become a local. Yeah, a little bit. It was really cool. So it was brilliant, and a couple of cities were absolutely phenomenal to visit.
Because I worked, when I first came out of uni, as we all try and kind of get into the arts, I worked front of house at the Mayflower Theatre. And I know this was before you were in Warhorse, but
we visited there,
so it came to the Mayflower, and again, they were with us for a big stint. The Lion King were also with us for a big stint, and Wicked, and the big shows are with us for kind of 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the need and the demand for that area to see the show. And I remember working that show, it was like an emotional roller coaster. Like, every time I worked a front of house shift, everyone was leaving just like in tears. From like how emotional it was, as in like in awe, awe-inspired tears and also emotion. But I'd literally, by kind of couple of weeks in, we started having boxes of tissues as people left. Because we were like, I'm sorry. Like, you're okay. It's like, you're going to be okay. And even myself, I'd seen it like, God, over 10 times. And even I welled up at the end of every single show. And I'd seen it, obviously, as well. Like, when you're front of house, you're taken out. You're not always in for the whole show. Even just, only catching snippets. the end just always got me. So I'd be there crying, and it was like a shared experience with the audience, you know, front of house members. It was a bit like everyone was coming out to the funeral. Sorry, that's really not selling it, but in a good way. It's like a cathartic show, and I think the storytelling and the imagery from the puppetry is just what makes it. It's just so beautiful, and that's what makes you as an audience member connect with it.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really interesting, is because the beautiful thing about puppetry is the audience wants to believe that the puppet is real.
Yeah.
You know, it very much calls back to a childhood sense of play that we all have inside of us. So when puppetry is in front of you and you're investing in that thing and it becomes a living, breathing character, you do get emotional attachment to it, and you like you say, the journey of the story is incredibly powerful. I actually did see the show. It was recently at the Mayflower.
Yes, you went to see it.
I went, and it's actually the first time I saw the show because
you were always in it.
No, so I'd never seen it before I was in it, and then I never had a show watch on tour because I just never missed a show.
Yeah.
So I did the whole tour, which is around 450 shows, but never actually watched it.
That is wild.
Yeah. So when it came back to the Mayflower, I was like, right, now's the time. And, you know, I know a few of the people in the cast.
It's a bit like a sliding doors moment.
Yeah, a little bit. And yes, I went and watched it at the Mayflower, and you're absolutely right. I mean, obviously, I knew what happened. I knew what was coming. I was still, just so emotionally there with the story. And the first time the curtain come up and the first song,
it's just
it got me. It got me. And then at the end, obviously, spoilers, when we know Joey's okay, I knew that was coming, but I was still like, oh my God, Joey.
Oh my gosh, is he going to be okay? And that puppet is real. That horse is real.
Incredible. And it's a testament to, you know, the people, every iteration, every generation of Warhorse, both cast and puppeteers, to be able to take an audience on that journey. So yeah, it was, I mean, it will always forever hold such an amazing special place in my heart. And as you say, we'd done an introduction course to Puppetry at university. I'd then gone on and explored it in my own avenues and right outside of that. And then after I graduated drama school, it just so happened that that's when Warhorse were re-auditioning. So it was like a perfect moment to everything that had come before. It was like full circle, and then it was like, right, and now Warhorse. Here we are. And I owe a lot of what I've done since to that show. So it will always be dear to me.
Oh, well, we love it. And again, like, I feel like, I don't know if it's just that I'm seeing more of it and I'm seeking more of it out, but I feel like for me, puppetry is having a bit of a resurgence recently.
Absolutely.
I'm glad it's not just me. Like, I'm seeing it more in your West End shows, in your Netflix programs, which you've worked on yourself. You know, I'm seeing it used more than, I don't know, maybe a few years ago.
Yeah, I think there's a real desire for it from an audience and also from a creative's point of view. There was a really interesting interview with Jenna Ortega, who recently finished Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
And I knew a few of the puppeteers on that series, and they were doing a lot of what's called kind of reference puppetry, but also actual puppetry, like animatronic puppetry or physically puppetry on set. And Jenna Ortega came out in an interview afterwards and said how special it was for her as an actor to be able to act off a puppet on the set rather than, say, just for example, maybe a tennis ball on a stick, you know, because that has been used before and I'm sure it is still used in places. Yeah. But from an actor point of view, that would be very hard to emotionally kind of connect with something when, you know,
it's a lot of visualization from the other actor.
Whereas if you've got puppeteers doing an absolutely fantastic job and there is a living, breathing thing in front of you, your job as an actor becomes easier. And I think it was really incredible that she came out and said that in an interview, because it really threw light on what it is puppeteers can do, particularly in TV and film. Because I think sometimes there's still from the outside world, there's still a bit of uncertainty or mystery about what it is we do. But I think audiences also now want to see real stuff, you know, as obviously CGI has got much better, and obviously now there's a big conversation in the wide world at the moment about AI. There's almost we all know when we've watched a film and it looks maybe too shiny or too unreal, and you go, okay, and you know you're watching CGI.
There's like a amount of green screens everywhere. There's an actor in an empty room.
And that's fine, you know, there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that in any way, shape, or form. But I know I've watched some films where I've gone, I just know
believe it.
that, I just know that's not real.
It does take away the kind of mystery of it a little bit.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think I personally am from the school of thought, or I think it works best where you've got a marriage of all three. So you've got practical effects on stage, whether that's puppetry or animatronics or creature work,
Yeah.
whatever, with maybe special effects and then also VFX afterwards.
Yeah.
When those three are working all together, you can create something which is genuinely incredible, and it makes more jobs for more people.
Oh
in
my
the arts.
gosh, because it takes a lot of people to
Exactly,
do that.
an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
I did a Netflix series a few years ago called Behind Her Eyes.
Yeah, this is when I hadn't spoken to Stephen. We hadn't spoken. We just like lost contact.
Yeah, a little bit.
Not through anything,
Just
not
life.
through anything bad. Honestly, we didn't fall out. We actually didn't. Just through life. And I was watching. I read the book Behind Her Eyes, and I was like, when it comes, a series or a film comes out on a book that I really loved, I'm going to watch it. So I watched it. I didn't know you were doing all the beautiful puppetry around it. And then I saw your cameo as an Uber driver in it. And I was like, oh my God, it's Stephen Love. I was like, oh my God.
So that's a perfect example of what I mean when I say like a marriage of kind of all three disciplines, because for those of you who haven't seen the show, in the series, in the book, the characters can astral project themselves out of their body. So basically their soul can leave their body and they can travel around, go into other people, all this really kind of cool stuff.
You are part of the soul. You're like,
So the puppetry, and I still have people today who don't realise that work is puppetry, and this is what I mean about sometimes.
I didn't realise.
Yeah, so from a wider world, people can go, oh, that is actually puppetry. But what it was a perfect marriage of all three, where to create the soul effect, there were puppets used on set, which is what I was heading up as a unit, and I had a fellow puppeteer with me, and they were spheres with light inside them, and then they were attached to various length poles depending on what shot was being used. So then when the actor's soul left their body, when the character's soul left their body, we would use these spheres to move as the soul travelling through space, and it meant that we could create this really beautiful kind of gorgeous movement.
It was stunning the way that the soul, and the soul was a character.
Exactly, and that's the sort of thing that you could have achieved the same effect in just CGI, but as actors, as actor and puppeteers, we were able to put kind of emotion into that. Maybe we're coming up to an object and then we're not sure what it is, so we stop and we hold and then we go back in.
And that's
all
the
this
thing.
really cool stuff which comes from a genuine performance. So we provided all of that on set, and that was us as puppeteers working with a company called Agog, who were doing the special effects. So they created the puppets and were controlling the lighting boards and that stuff. And then in post-production, a company called Goodbye Kansas with the VFX crew. So they came in after the shoot had wrapped, and they removed the poles, which were in shot, and removed the spheres.
Was that really cool to see?
But they kept the light. Yeah, so that was amazing.
When you saw the two kind of it coming apart to become whole. Really.
Exactly. Yeah. So once they'd removed all of that, they kept the gorgeous light that was created by us, because lights are really tricky to fake.
Oh yeah.
Particularly all the gorgeous shadows that were happening. And then they put a
darkness in the show.
kind of VFX, special effect, kind of wispy thing in the centre of the light source, which is where the sphere was. So that was all three aspects working at once. And as you said, it was a really fantastic, amazing aspect of the show. And that wouldn't have been possible had not all three worked together. And that's what I personally believe. And there's amazing puppeteers and creature companies out there doing amazing work on things like Star Wars, Jurassic World, some really big, cool stuff.
Well, as soon as you know, like as soon as I found out that was the case in Behind Her Eyes, I was like, I can see it now.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? I can see how that would have been done. And I think social media really helps with people seeing how films and TV shows and theatre is made. Because I think people can really access behind the scenes. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to lie, I went down a little rabbit hole and I stalked you after I watched it, because I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, oh, he's just got like a little cameo in this, great. And I was like, no, he's doing so much more in it. And then through your social media, I could see the process of, how that had been done. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the cameo was actually me being quite cheeky. That was us up in Scotland on night shoots. And we just finished a very long night shoot. I think it was about 5, 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
Sun was coming up on this Highland loch. which was beautiful and stunning, but very tired. And I walked into the production truck, and just to clarify what was happening the next day, and I noticed a few of the characters, because on a production truck they have all the characters up on a wall, and then they have actors' headshots are underneath who they're playing.
Did you cast yourself?
Well, yeah. So I basically saw that they had some empty spaces,
and you were like, my face will fit there.
Yeah, and I basically said to the GM, which is the production manager, the PM production manager, look, me and my fellow puppeteer, we're actors, by the way. So if you've got a little,
I'm an actor puppeteer, don't you know?
And so it just so happened that there were two very tiny roles, as you say. I was an Uber driver. A friend of mine called Elan, who's an amazing puppeteer and actor, became a barman, which was great.
You had a line.
Yeah, you know,
don't diss a line.
No, we both had lines, and we basically got to fill in these tiny, very little roles. So Elan was in the first episode. I was in the last episode, and that's just a really nice, cool, organic thing. But also a way of just going, you know, if you don't take a shot, you don't know.
Oh my gosh!
And that was purely just from us going, we can act. And I think because we had done so much of the puppetry work on the series, I think the production team, the director, who was a fantastic man called Eric, it was their way of kind of saying thank you to us, while also obviously understanding we were acts in our own way. Yeah. But, you know, we didn't have to necessarily. No. We did send in a self-tape as an audition, but I think the self-tape would have been pretty terrible for us not to have got that role. So it was a really nice opportunity to have our face out there. Because like you've said, you didn't know about the puppetry, but then you see my face and you're like, okay, well, that's cool.
Looking around it, and that's the thing, isn't it? And I think I love it when I see people I know and stuff. I'm like, I just feel like it's just so nice, isn't it? Because we work so hard in the industry. We do a lot, like behind the scenes stuff. I wouldn't have even known you'd done that if I hadn't seen your face, and it's a bit of like a thing for me in the industry. Do you know what I mean? There's the kind of, it's a bit sad for me that people aren't shouted about for doing the behind the scenes stuff. That's one of the reasons I started this podcast. Nice. But also that people aren't shouted about that much, even for being the faces that are there as well, unless you're the lead role or something like that. And it's really interesting what you're saying about just taking the opportunities, and I think we have to do that as people in the arts, because we often straddle lots of different disciplines. We don't just do one thing, because often we either can't or we don't want to, because we've got to make money, and also we want to do other things that are creative. So I was going to ask you, how do your nearest and dearest describe what you do for work? Like, do they know? Or is it a little bit like, Stephen just is, I don't know, he's an actor?
It's always a very interesting moment whenever I have a new job or a new gig. I think it's also a kind of generational thing as well. So obviously my friends, people I trained with in drama school, or people like yourself, or genuinely people my age, they know me as an actor, and they go, okay, cool. Whereas, I love him dearly, but bless him, my dad, for example, whenever I've got a new gig, one of the first questions they'll ask me, is it paid?
Oh, yeah.
Like, everything I do is paid. Yeah. Like, and it's a very interesting moment, because it's almost like that for them is what the quantification is. Like, if it's paid, then it's a proper job. If it's not, it's not. And obviously we know it's not that kind of clear in our industry. And I've had a few other people, I won't mention names, but when, like, for example, when I've talked about remortgaging or something like that, and they've kind of turned around and gone, well, obviously you'll have to get a proper job for you to do that. And I've gone,
oh my gosh,
okay.
It's
and
so
that moment to kind of like bite your tongue, because I go,
the word proper job.
Great. Because also, would you
ask anyone else, like, were you getting paid? Like, say you were an accountant.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got a new client, and would your dad say, you're getting paid for that? He wouldn't even, do you know what I mean?
Don't get me wrong, I love him for it, it's brilliant.
Oh God, no, I'm just using your dad as an example, but I think it's that's an absolute thing, that people see it as sometimes as a lesser role. And oh my God, we put our heart and soul into what we do. I'm not saying other people don't. I know other industries are just as important, but it's interesting about that. The money aspect is how people gauge whether or not, like, you're successful.
Well, I think that's it, the successful thing, because I think, so when I first started in this industry, I always said that for me, because success is different for every person. Yeah. For me, success was working in this industry, earning enough money to be able to have a roof over my head, food in the fridge, and live the sort of life I want to live. That for me is success.
Me too.
I have no I have no kind of desire for the echelons of like Hollywood or naming rights.
The red carpets.
Cool, like that's great and fantastic. It's just not for me.
No.
If I can live a happy, comfortable life while being in the arts, that for me is success. But I think when people aren't from the industry, or maybe it's a kind of slightly foreign concept to them, we always try, when we're talking to someone and we're talking about a subject we necessarily don't know a lot about, as people we tend to try and find a common ground inside of us to go, oh, of course, I can relate to it in this sense. I think sometimes, and this has happened to many people I've spoken to, they use kind of celebrity status, like celebrities and people like in the news as like a reference point. So like, for example, I've done a little bit of work on Doctor Who, and a few people, when I did that, I was actually filming with David Tennant. So they were kind of asking me like, oh, so I like you and David doing this, you and that, and I was like, it's
not that.
Yeah, it's chalk and cheese.
Like I'm over there, he's over there. They're filming his bit, I'm filming my bit.
Exactly.
Like it's a TV show. It comes together.
Yeah, and yes, we have scenes together, but David Tennant is David Tennant, and I'm doing creature work. It's very different.
I am a creature puppeteer over here. Yeah.
So when, for example, there might be a time when maybe I haven't had a professional gig in a while, that age-old thing, someone goes, why don't you maybe just audition for EastEnders? And I go,
my gosh, I've had that.
Because it's that easy. It's very interesting, and I think...
And it's a completely... Oh my gosh, soap operas are completely different, aren't they? Like, I always think about soap operas and I'm like, imagine literally going... It's like a 9-to-5 job. Going in every single day to that same set and learning a script like there and then.
Yeah, it's mad.
It's mad. It's wild. The amount they have to have, I don't think I could do that. Like the amount they have to have in their heads. And also it brings me on to when you were saying about how people quantify success and how they try and relate. The question I hate the most, I'm going to put it out there so that if anyone listening to this, if you ask me this question, I'm really not going to be happy, is, so like, what's the biggest thing you've been in?
Yeah. Yeah, so I get that a lot.
Have you been in anything I'd have seen?
Yep, that one as well.
And my response now, I've got the response down to a T, is, well, how often do you go to the theatre? Yeah. Because I'm mainly in theatre. I don't do a lot of screen acting. So I'm like, well, how often do you go to the theatre? And they're like, oh, well, I sometimes go with my family to the Panto, or maybe the last thing I saw was Wicked on the West End. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you won't have seen me then. Yeah. Because I'm not in those things that you see once every 2 years or something. Although you can say you have been, so at least you've got a little, shut up, I've been in Warhorse.
I mean, I'm in a fortunate position that I guess you can say that I've got a couple of like headline names and obviously some big stuff, We've
all got stuff we go to if we just want to say, okay, I've been in this, and that will appease you and you'll understand that. And
that's the thing, I think, and I yes, that question used to really quite irk me as well a couple of years ago. I think now that I can kind of say, obviously, like Doctor Who, Netflix, Warhorse, whatever.
You've got names now.
But it's not, I'd never kind of begrudge anyone for saying it, because I think it's just...
oh, no, I know.
I think it's, again, it's someone trying to, like, find a common ground with you. And I think it's quite odd, like, if someone to say, right, okay, simplify what you do in a sentence, I can do that, but it's a sentence that won't make sense to many people unless you're in the industry. So I won't ever... Like, when I have maybe these moments, I'm going, oh, well, you've got to get a mortgage, you've got to get a proper job. I know it's not coming from a place of...
No, they just don't understand.
Yeah, and that's fine, and that's okay.
Yeah. And this podcast can help people understand.
And, go back to my dad, bless him, when he says, is it paid work or not? I know that's coming from a place of kind of love and concern.
You want to make
and
sure you're valued.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if I kind of feel like I have to be in a place where I go, I'm always getting paid, it's okay. I can say that, and it's fine. So it's not ever... something. No,
there's never malice behind any of the questions.
Exactly.
I think it's just we meet so many people, new people all the time, not even necessarily in the industry, just through going on tour and staying in different cities, from just, working around and doing everything all at once, that we meet so many different people, and we get asked similar questions a lot, and I think sometimes it's a bit like, oh, okay, how am I going to bridge this one this time? Or also, do I want to get into it? Sometimes I don't always want to talk about my career. Like, sometimes I just want to hang out with people.
I'm kind of getting to that point as well, which is weird, because now I do things on my CV that maybe I can kind of name drop or whatever. I actually don't really want to anymore. Like,
okay, I'm going to take yours.
I'm don't really talk that much about what I do, which is quite interesting.
Well, we live and breathe our
apart from
work.
being on this podcast, of course.
Obviously, because I've asked you to do that. But like, we live and breathe our work. Often, working many hours in a week. It's very flexible. Sometimes we're working flat out in roles, in acting roles or creative roles. Sometimes we've got huge gaps in that and like hiatuses. So it kind of brings me on to my next question, which, what is the weirdest job you've ever done? Like the oddest job? Now, this can be one of those kind of in-between gig jobs where it's like a filler, or it can be actually in the creative world. Like, where have you ever been working in something or on something where you're like, this is weird?
So I think,
what am I doing?
I think two examples come to mind. One in a creative job and one not in a creative
Love
job.
that. Give me both.
So the not creative job was obviously during COVID, which was very tough for everyone in the industry. And when things started to open back up, so when certain film sets were able to start producing work under very strict conditions, I ended up working as part of a COVID team on a Netflix series. And that was very bizarre because it was great being back on set and being at Shepperton Studios, and it was cool. But the regulations, the social distancing, the COVID testing, that made it obviously a very different experience, very strange. People in the crew had a very kind of strong dislike of the COVID team. I think because we were kind of the ones trying to uphold the rules so the production could carry on.
Stunting my creativity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, but also then, I gained this ridiculous vast knowledge of COVID testing and loads of medical information that I now will have no use for ever again. And it was quite bizarre. But, they were long days. You're talking like 5:30, 6 in the morning, getting to Shepperton, working until at least 7, 8 at night.
Making sure everything's safe.
Like, looking back on that was a crazy time. It really was a bit of a mad time. And there was a moment where I remember being on set, kind of watching everyone all masked up, and this incredible stunt sequence was happening, but it was all, COVID safe and friendly and everything. And it was just an odd moment. It was like, this is...
Did you have to test people? Did you have to, with all
I
the
didn't
stick-up,
actually do any of the actual testing, but I was kind of the one like organising all the testing.
I was going to be like, who's the most famous person that you COVID tested?
So that was quite weird. And then creatively, I did this job. It was a puppet job. It was back in, I don't know, probably 10 years ago now. And it was for a pub.
Yeah.
And they were doing a theme night. It was on New Year's Eve.
Okay.
And they were doing a theme night, and they wanted some sort of entertainment between the starter course and the main course.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how we got round to it, but basically I ended up being asked, could I create a little puppet show in between the starter and the mains based on their theme? And I think their theme was, what was their theme? I can't remember. Anyway, so we did this. There was a theme. We did the thing. But it wasn't really like overly advertised that we were doing this thing. And all the customers have finished their starters. And then me and two other puppeteers pop out with a table, and we start doing this little performance with a puppet. And everyone in the room is looking at us like, who on earth are these people?
You're like, hi!
And we were like, so we're providing some entertainment. And everyone was like, okay.
Why?
Yeah, exactly. Why? Why are you here? And just they did not get it. And the venue hadn't
there was
introduced us or
meld.
No, not at all. Like, as far as the customers are concerned, we were just three random people with a puppet that
I'd broken in and we're doing a little
made
show
myself at my house, like a bit of a ragtag puppet, doing some random thing which was kind of like slightly related to the theme of the night. And the audience were just, I mean, I'm sure obviously you're a performer as well, so you've had shows where the audience are just completely disengaged.
They are just not connecting. And you're like, oh wow, I'm on here for another 20 minutes or whatever, I've just got to keep going.
But what the venue had asked us for was a really funny interactive script.
And no one wanted to interact.
No, so every joke's falling flat, no one's interacting, and quite a lot of the jokes were callback jokes, so say in the script, calling back to the start of the script. If you don't interact with the first joke, the second joke ain't going to land.
This is actually making me physically
it was excruciating 20 minutes. And we
so it was 20 minutes?
Yeah, it was about 15-20 minutes, however long it took for the main course to come out. And when we finished, again, the audience were like, "Oh, you're done." Okay, little scattered applause, and then we just kind of packed up and left. And it was very, very bizarre. It was because also as for a puppet show, devising kind of 15, 20, however long it was, minutes worth of work actually takes a long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were really giving it our all, and the audience just did not care.
It's the worst.
I think it actually probably ended up ruining their evening, to be honest. I think they were just like, can we just eat our food in peace and celebrate
They
the new
probably
year?
just also felt the awkwardness.
Yeah, probably.
Everyone felt awkward, and everyone wanted to go home.
So yeah, that was a random one. So yeah, I'll go with those two.
Oh my gosh, I feel you. The reason why I was having a reaction to that one was I do a lot of immersive work, and
Right.
absolutely, like, if you're an immersive actor and you're trying to immerse the audience and they don't want to come on that journey with you, oh my goodness, it's like pulling teeth, and the improvisational skills you've got to have as well as staying in character is just out of this world, and you feel very exhausted after one of those.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I think
Fair play.
it
That
is.
sounds tough.
Yeah, it is. So that's why I'm like, I've been there. there. But yeah, I mean, it's all part of what we do. It's all
Yeah,
part
to be fair, it's
part of
all-
what we
all
do.
part of the journey.
And talking about like what we do, I just wondered if you wanted to like shout about anything you're working on at the moment. I know that you've also got a little, I don't know, like I guess a side hustle. I don't know if you want to call it that, or a B side to your career, where you have your own puppetry workshop company.
Yeah, so I mean, it started off as a side hustle, but actually now it is a kind of a fully formed business,
Yes.
and it's gone really well, luckily, which is great. But yes, it's a puppetry workshop company down here in the south. I mean, we're now actually going kind of all across England, but primarily we've set up in the south.
Yeah.
And it's the aim of the workshop company is to introduce young people to puppetry at a much younger age. So obviously we mentioned we had a puppetry workshop at university,
Yeah.
which was fantastic, and
That was
you know, for me
such a
that
good
was
day.
absolutely pivotal in
Yeah.
my career moving forward.
Yeah.
But that was quite rare. We were
it
very
was.
fortunate
We
to
were
do that.
we had handspring, didn't
Exactly,
we? We were
which was
so fortunate. When I've told
amazing.
other artists that I had that at uni in like second year, they were like, "What?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
mad.
unheard of."
And I think, I mean, puppetry is just beautiful in the sense of everything it can do in terms of helping to develop kind of interpersonal skills and competencies
yeah.
is phenomenal. But also, if, say, for example, we're going into a college, if people have chosen to do drama at college or, say, like university, chances are they probably want to go into the arts in
Yeah.
a professional capacity. It's good to show them that puppetry, as we've already said about on this episode, that how embedded puppetry now is
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
industry.
yeah.
It's just really good to get more people doing it at
Yeah.
a younger age and see that it is a viable career. But also, if, say, for example, someone wants to go and be a professional actor, I've had friends tell me in the past they've turned up to a puppetry audition and they've been so worried about getting it right, like technically getting it right, that they haven't been able to play and just have fun with the puppet, create a character, and that's the beauty of puppetry.
Yeah, that's
So-
the main basis of it. You've got to be
Exactly.
able to have fun with the puppet and be at one almost with the puppet. Otherwise, you're not bringing it to life.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
if you're worrying about, oh, am I technically getting it right? Does the leg look right, or whatever? And you're getting in your head, chances are it's going to affect what you're delivering.
It'll be a bit wooden.
So, and this is what, particularly for like the older age ranges that we go and work with, it's just so we can say, right, you know the
Loosen
basics
up.
now. So if you do get an audition later on in the future, later down in your career, you can go, okay, I already know kind of the basics, so you can just
Yeah.
have fun and have some time. And then the younger workshops are just, generally to help young people be more creative, work in teams.
It just sounds fun. It just sounds
theatre.
fun.
Yeah,
Like,
and
a
it's
lot
gone
of fun.
really well. And you know, we're growing at a really great pace.
Yeah.
I think next year is going to be a brilliant year for us. And I'm just really happy that it's taken off.
Yeah.
I did try and start it at the end of 2019,
Oh, and then obviously.
and then obviously the
we
wonderful
all
pandemic.
know what happened.
So it
yeah.
had to kind of go on pause until back end of 2022. But yeah, the last 2 years have gone really, really well, and I'm excited to see where the company's going to go.
So exciting. It's like, as a facilitator myself, I love working with physical theatre and puppetry, and they come hand in hand, don't they? And actually, also what you said there about helping people become more of a physical performer, I think is really important. I think puppetry is one of those things that helps you as an actor, I think, to be that. Performance, I think, so important as an actor.
Absolutely, and I think what puppetry is brilliant at doing is helping. You know, puppetry isn't about you.
Yeah.
You're bringing a puppet to life, and as an actor, I personally find that a very freeing
Yeah.
art form, because no one's really looking at you; they're looking at the puppet, and that's an incredible thing. And I think we've seen this a lot in the workshops with maybe people who feel a bit more shy, a bit unconfident. They pick up a puppet, and suddenly it's like, bam! They
You've got
become alive.
support.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and it's honestly phenomenal. So if anyone's interested, the company is called Paper Puppets.
Yeah.
We can be found on Instagram. Spoiler, we are rebranding at the end of this year. Can't say what yet. It's going to keep it official. But for now, the company is
and I'll
Puppets.
put all the links in all the social media posts, in the bio and everything for this podcast. But thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
I hope you've had fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just so great to just chat.
It really is.
Yay. Thanks, Steve. Bye.
Bye.